Our responsive reading is an insert in your order of service, so pull it out. It was written by Lisa Friedman. She wrote, "We touch the floor to remember that whenever we bring our best self, its holy grain, we reach for the sky to remember that we are part of the mystery much bigger than ourselves. We hold hands to remember that we need one another and are part of one human family. We join voices to remember that we each have a gift to offer the world and to use in making the world. My prayer this morning is also from the Daily Word, and it was from March 9th of this year. The title of the prayer is, "My Actions Reflect My Compassionate Heart." Please close your eyes or center yourself in whatever way that works for you as we enter into a time of prayer and silent reflection. Compassion is an expression of divine wisdom and strength. When I open my heart to others, I see beyond appearances of fear or lack. I'm not deterred by thoughts of helplessness. Instead, I'm guided by the clarity of divine intelligence. With faith and confidence, I invite Spirit within to inspire my thoughts and actions. I trust whatever I offer, presence, prayer, or tangible support, will uplift and empower. My compassion is not about fixing anyone. It's about reminding others of their strength, divinity, and capacity to meet life with courage and grace. Rooted in love, my compassionate actions become windows of truth through which others glimpse their wholeness, their worth, and their freedom to live with sufficiency and joy. Amen and namaste. Recently, the UUA transitioned from the long-held principles and purposes to values. I have to admit, I didn't believe they would actually make the change. But like the fact that spring cleaning is often necessary, maybe we needed a fresh reminder of what is actually important. Maybe we had become too complacent with our decades-old principles, and we needed new reminders of who we claim to be. One of those new, but not really new, values is generosity. About generosity, the UUA language says, "We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and we covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources because our generosity connects us to one another in our relationships, both of interdependence and mutuality." That says a lot. But what I want to focus on today are some thoughts on how we can freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources as we consciously seek to also offer a little more hope to the world around us. For most of my sermons, usually some specific inspiration leads to the overall sermon. But sometimes there is no specific idea, and instead there are many different thoughts. When that happens, I often use an acrostic approach, where each letter of a word is the first letter of an idea related to the overall theme. Today, not surprisingly, The acrostic is generosity. G is for grace. Grace is the recognition and appreciation of something in our lives. We say grace before a meal in thanks for the food that sustains us. For many in the religious world, grace is an undeserved gift. And I think of life itself as an undeserved gift. What exactly did any of us do to deserve this amazing gift we call life? Unfortunately, we often take this gift of life for granted. Another word that begins with G. But life is precious, and it shouldn't be taken for granted. Buddhist author and teacher Jack Kornfield says, "You participate in a community committed to spiritual life. You have a healthy family. You're surrounded by devoted brothers and sisters. Now you're sitting and you ask yourself, where is the grace? The answer is, you are neck deep in grace. Whoever we are held by the warmth of the sun and the shining embrace of the snow, nourished by the sweet water of the rain, alive in the great mystery. With an open heart and an open mind, we discover a great stillness, a loving presence with things as they are. As we accept the stream of life, enlightenment and grace arise naturally." I simply add that with this grace, this gratitude for simply being alive, it opens us up to sharing what we have with others in support of this amazing and mysterious gift of life. But in reality, life is often difficult, which reminds me of an old saying. And we hear it when we see someone in a terrible situation. They could have lost a job, or they're homeless, or they have a disease, and someone will say, "There, but by the grace of God, go I." And that is an all too frequent reality. Difficulties and tragedy happen to us all. So what can we do? Just like our parable this morning, we can't save everyone, but we can do something, and there are many ways we can be generous and give back. So G is for grace, being grateful and giving back, and in the process, we provide hope. Moving on, our first E is for expertise, which comes from experience. And when we share our experience, we are being generous with something we've accumulated simply by living. And by sharing our experience, we can ease the burden or the costs on something we value. It does take a village of experience to keep our lay-led religious communities up and running. Recent examples for me include individuals who have expertise with copiers, heating and air conditioning systems, general contracting, bookkeeping, landscaping, marketing, music, law, management, computers, and investment, and all with talents which, when shared, ease the worries and expenses and allow the better prioritization of our limited financial resources. So, if you have some expertise or experience which could be used to further a cause you value, don't be afraid to share it. Your expertise could help the cause you champion spread a little more hope for those they serve and for those in need. N is for neighbor. In one ancient story about the Buddha, he found one of the monks sick and uncared for because the other monks were busy with their meditations. The Buddha himself washed and tended to the monk, and then he called the entire community together to castigate and instruct them. He said, "If you don't care for each other as family, who else will? Those who would attend to the Buddha, let them attend to the sick." 500 years later, Jesus also reminded us of the two greatest commandments, which were to love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Both of these great spiritual leaders, the Buddha and Jesus, reminded us to love each other and that everyone is in fact our neighbor. Jesus told a story where he said, "Everyone is your neighbor," and that was the parable of the Good Samaritan. At the end of the story, the Samaritan even generously paid for the man to stay in an inn until he was well. There are many ways we can be good Samaritans. But I have another take on being a neighbor, and it comes from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Fred Rogers shared this story, and sometimes being a good neighbor is as simple as being a good friend. Once, at a special Olympics, there were 9 contestants for the 100-yard dash, all of them challenged in some way. They assembled at the starting line, and at the sound of the gun, they took off. One little boy didn't get very far. He stumbled and fell and hurt his knee and began to cry. The other 8 children heard the boy crying. They slowed down, turned around, and ran back to him. Every one of them ran back to him. The little boy got up, and he and the rest of the runners linked their arms together, and they joyfully walked to the finish line. They all finished the race at the exact same time. And when they did, everyone in the stadium stood up and clapped and whistled and cheered for a long, long time. And you know why? Because deep down we know that what really matters in life is more than winning. What really matters is helping others win too, even if it means slowing down and changing course now and then. Our second E is for education. And in our culture, an education is not only important for a variety of employment opportunities, it's also critical in helping us understand the world we live in. One of my grandfathers, my mother, and my sister were all teachers. My grandfather taught for a few years, but my grandmother shamed him into quitting because he wasn't making enough money. That was about 90 years ago, and not much has changed. The world still values making money more than helping other people. However, both my mother and sister taught for decades, and they steered many lives in the positive directions education offers. At my mother's memorial service, dozens of people showed up because of the difference she made in their lives. Both my mother and my sister could have had more lucrative careers, but they, like many others, chose to be teachers, a path some take that has benefited us all. In another case, years ago, families in my home church chose to put money in a college scholarship fund, specifically for high school students who would be the first in their families to attend college. The fund is very cumbersome to administer. It worked for a while, at least while those families were still in the church, but after they were gone, the fund went dormant because no one was willing to administer the cumbersome process. Fortunately, one individual has been willing to take it back on, and now several students are receiving opportunities they may never have had. Education helps the one receiving the education, but it only happens because someone else is willing to actually educate or provide the funds education requires. Hope for our future depends on the education of our youth. R is for rescue. Many people want to make a difference in the world, and one of the ways they do it is by supporting one of the many animal rescue organizations. The most common seems to be for dogs. Both my best friend and my sister support specific rescue organizations which take in sick, abandoned, and abused dogs. First, they see to their medical needs, and then they get them in good shape and offer them up for adoption locally or send them to other areas of the country where loving adoptive families are ready and waiting for them. These rescue organizations not only save animals, those animals bring joy and happiness to the individuals or families that adopt them. For many lonely people, these dogs provide desperately needed companionship, and through that companionship, they provide hope. O is for one. Start with one project, one cause, or one person, and help that one. Yes, I know the need can be overwhelming, so just start with one. Mother Teresa offered the following: I never look at the masses as my responsibility. I look at the individual. I can only love one person at a time, just one. So I began. I picked up one person. Maybe if I hadn't picked up that one person, I wouldn't have picked up 42,000. The whole work is only a drop in the ocean. But if I didn't put the drop in, the ocean would be one drop less. The same goes for you. The same thing in your family. The same thing in your church, your community. Just doing, helping, one. When we begin with one project, one cause, or one person, we initiate hope. So start with one. S is for sacrifice. When individuals make personal sacrifices, it's often truly inspiring. Several years ago, one of my friends experienced kidney failure. Our bodies come with two kidneys, and when one fails, the other usually handles the load. When both fail, dialysis or a transplant are your only options, and those were his options. Fortunately, his sister was a match, and she was willing to give him one of hers. That was a conscious sacrifice on her part, and many people are unwilling to make that kind of sacrifice. But she was, and it gave him the gift of many more years of life. Personal sacrifice can be life or death for someone in need, and it often provides hope. I is for income. And our own income is what we often think about when we're considering being generous. We give some of our income to a cause or a person we believe in. And for all of us, it's a finite and limited income. But that doesn't mean we can't give a little or even a little more. Recently, I've adopted a habit of tipping in unlikely places, mostly with cashiers at checkout counters. Usually it's $1, but sometimes it's $5. In return, I often receive a smile and a thanks. But sometimes I hear, "Oh, I can have lunch," or a Coke, or a snack at my break. And I realize I've given a little bit of joy to someone in a rather dreary job. Just give what you can. Every little bit helps and makes a difference. T is for talent. In the early 80s, I had a friend who was a very successful interior decorator in Houston. I don't know why, but he was active with the local chapter of the American Cancer Societies. Of course, that organization is always looking for ways to raise money to fight cancer, and Daryl wanted to help. So, Daryl decided to copy a successful event already going on in Dallas. Daryl told me one of his talents was throwing a good party. So that's what he did. And the Houston Cattle Barons Ball was born. Now here we are, over 40 years later, and that ball, just a big party and fundraiser, is still going strong, having raised millions of dollars to fight cancer. His vision, aligned with his talent, was a powerful force for doing good in Houston. That money funds treatments, care, and breakthroughs in the fight against cancer and gives hope to many people afflicted by this terrible disease. So, open your minds and envision how your talents can make a difference in the world around you. And finally, why is for you. Give from who you are and accept that who you are will change over time. And that's okay. We're all changing over time. When I was a small child, my dad was a fireman at the all-volunteer fire department in my small North Louisiana town. When firemen and fire trucks arrive, hope also arrives for those who care about what's on fire. When my dad was in his elder years, he couldn't fight actual fires anymore, but he was still capable of helping the mostly all-volunteer fire department. He helped as a dispatcher. He wasn't ashamed or embarrassed because he could no longer fight actual fires. He just did what he was still capable of doing. So please, don't bemoan your reduced capacities. Instead, look to other uses for your remaining abilities. So, why is for you? Be the you who you are now, and do whatever you're still capable of doing. I'll start my conclusion with an odd little story. Two men were finishing up in a restroom. One man was in a suit and tie. He dried his hands on a paper towel and then proceeded to wipe up the counter with the paper towel. The other man found this behavior quite odd and jokingly said, "How long have you worked here?" The man in the suit replied, "I was taught to leave every place I've been a little better than how I found it." I wonder how much better the world would be if we all practiced that simple lesson, leaving every place a little better than how we found it. In conclusion, generosity is a choice to give back some of what has come our way, whether by hard work or by sheer dumb luck. The choice to give back is ours. Ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was a slave much of his life, said, "Follow through on all your generous impulses. Don't question them, especially if a friend needs you. Act on his or her behalf. Don't hesitate. Don't sit around speculating about the possible inconvenience, problems, or danger. As long as you let your reason lead the way, you will be safe." In fact, each of us started out with nothing, and others helped us all along our way. Once again, Buddhist teacher Jack Kornfield says, "For the mature spirit, freedom is the journey itself. It's like a labyrinth, a circle, a flower's petal by petal opening, or a deepening spiral, a dance around the still point, the center of all things. In the course of this great spiral we call life, we return to where we started again and again, but each time with a fuller, more open heart. And that heart must be connected back to a life of daily devotion and generosity." Amen and Namaste. Now please join me in singing our closing hymn, number 318. "We Would Be One." Number 318.